We have had yet another historic congressional meeting on UFOs. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had two Navy pilots talk about their experiences with UFOs, the famous Tic Tac incident, and other incidents that the Navy has reported that were exposed in the New York Times 2017 article. And we also had an intelligence officer, David Grusch, come out and say as a whistleblower that he has talked to people who have firsthand knowledge of crashed aircraft, basically what we call UFOs, and even quote-unquote biologics. And he didn't really go into more detail as to what the biologics, and he did not see the biologics, and he was cryptic as to whether or not he had any firsthand information on the actual craft themselves. So there hasn't been any congressional hearings since Project Blue Book, which reigned in the 50s and 60s. In June of 2021, we had the Office of the Director of National Intelligence provide a report to Congress. And then in 2022, last July, we had a congressional hearing with two high-level intelligence officers or personnel types. And we had this next one just a couple of weeks ago. And I've had several people reach out to me and want to know my opinions on this since I do work and research in these areas. And I've been on military duty, so now I'm back home and can play around with this topic some more. So there's been a lot of buzz about this. What should Christians think about what these guys were saying? Well, there wasn't really anything new in the hearings. I don't think that was the point. The point really seemed to be to get these points on the record. I think Congress wanted to pave a path forward, and to do that, instead of just having stories here and there that want to have it on official record, and to be able to bring these guys into the skiff to talk about secret things. And they weren't able to do that from what I understand, but I'm not certain about that. I know that beforehand they couldn't bring him in. So what are we supposed to make of this? These claims that there are crashed craft, which are not new. These claims are not new. There have been other projects and claims about crashed craft and even alien bodies as early as 1947 with the Roswell incident. And there have been other issues or claims of crashed craft as well as retrievals of alien bodies. So how should we as Christians and just thinking people in general deal with these questions? Well, let's look at the facts. The facts about ufology are these. One, there are at least hundreds of thousands of reports of UFO activity, sightings, and there are many reports, thousands as well, at least hundreds and if not thousands of abductions. And these reports go back well beyond the beginning of American ufology. Both UFO sightings as well as reports of abductions go back hundreds of years. But there have been, seemingly anyway, more and more reports in the last few decades, starting in the 60s with Betty and Barney Hill, famous case, 1975 with Travis Walton, and many since then. So something is going on, unless you just think everybody is lying. And there doesn't seem to be, we can't seem to say that every UFO sighting and every abduction report are hoaxes or misidentifications, even though many of them are misidentifications. And what is interesting, and what has come out in government research since the very beginning of time, is that studies of ufology and reports of UFOs and these encounters are frequently followed or surrounded by what we would consider paranormal or poltergeist activity. Weird things going on. Car doors shutting when there's no car, babies making noises when there's no baby in the house, footsteps, drawers opening, bottles of wine coming flying off the shelf in the living room with no apparent reason whatsoever. Voices. Not a fun topic to talk about in my office late at night by myself next to the attic. So you got lots of weird, lots of weird paranormal poltergeist activity. And if you want a more recent account, read Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. And you will see some of the people who actually, one of the people that was at, who was at the hearing, George Knapp, who can be seen right behind, I think right behind David Grusch, who was this intelligence officer making these claims. I believe he was in a red tie, white hair, has been working on UFO reports for a long time, a few decades. And he co-authored a book about Skinwalker Ranch, which was in northeast Utah. There's a show about it. It's been pretty popular in the last couple of decades. And the government actually has done research on this area. And the one thing I thought was really interesting about that book, and I've seen this with other ufologists too, who are not Christians, who are not trying to spread the Christian message, they are saying there is a paranormal poltergeist kind of occultic activity going on with these sightings and with these reports of close encounters. So these really are the facts, and we have to explain them with all the, we take all the data together and explain these facts. So we have the reports of UFO sightings, and of course, most of them can be explained either as misidentifications or a very low number of hoaxes, but we see them around the world. We see them throughout time, and then these cases of abductions, and then again, the paranormal kind of poltergeist activity. So now we have the new report, which says that he knows people at least who has firsthand accounts of these supposed crashed craft, as well as whatever biologics mean. And he did not say what that meant. He did explain it, though, as being non-human. So how should we go about answering these claims? I've had people who are fairly upset about these claims that David Grusch was making, and the idea that there are other aliens out there and that we are either not the center of God's creation, or maybe it would call into question Christianity in general. I'm actually going to be at a conference in October. It's a conference on space philosophy and ethics, and I was actually asked to apply, and I'm going to be speaking about the implications of extraterrestrial life on Christian theology. So people have kind of been upset about this. Well, what is, if David Grusch is what he's saying is true, what implications does that have on life in general and in on Christianity in particular? Well, there are 4 questions I want to look at in this segment we have here. 1, what do we do with this info? And then 2, what should we believe? How should we form these views? Number 3, and then what does it mean for Christianity? So what do we do with the info? What should we believe? How should we form our views or opinions on these things? And then what does this ultimately mean for Christianity? Well, just a few answers. And this is just meant to be a kind of a broad overview question of what we saw a couple weeks ago. Number 1, I would say be skeptical. These are not new claims, and all they are claims. We do not have, that we know of, that I know of, any verified information that David Grusch has brought out. Now, that's not the case with what Ryan Graves or David Fravor has said. We actually have documented evidence of their claims of both on radar and on their sensors, their visual sensors as well, about the tic-tac, and these different things, gimbal and go fast and all that. But as far as what David Grusch is saying, and I'm not saying he's lying, but we don't have any other verifiable information. I personally don't think he's lying. I think that David Grusch probably is telling Congress and the American people what he believes to be true. The question is, what is true? So until we have verifiable evidence that independent researchers can go and check out, all that we have are claims that Mr. Grusch is making. And I'm not trying to disparage him, and I'm not trying to deny the claims. I'm simply saying That's all they are until we have hard, fast, verifiable information. It's only an assertion. I think he probably believes them. And people might say, well, and this is my question too, is that, well, we don't have any evidence, but he's telling Congress this. Why would someone tell Congress these things if he's lying? Because lying to Congress is not a good thing to do. Again, I don't think he's lying. I think he believes what he's saying. However, we do have somebody from AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, who specializes in this very thing, and they have come out denying Grusch's claim, saying there's no evidence to it. And there actually has been testimony from one of their representatives to Congress, too. So somebody on both sides of the debate, one saying, Grusch saying, yeah, there are these things, and then the representative from AARO, both to Congress, saying there are not these things. There's no evidence to support this assertion, and what he's saying is simply false. They both have testified to Congress. So all we can say about that is that it might give us some credibility to believe Grusch in terms of saying that he believes what he's saying. It doesn't mean what he's saying is right, but I think he probably believes what he's saying, or he would not want to have come across to Congress with those statements. So one, we should be skeptical, be kind of agnostic until there's more evidence, because right now all is our assertions. And then two, we should not change what we do know based on what we don't know. Okay, we should focus on the facts and the data and what we have good evidence for. For example, we do have good evidence that there are UFO sightings. We do have good evidence that there are abduction reports where people think they're being abducted. I don't think they're being abducted. I've already mentioned in other videos that I don't think that aliens can account for this. And I think for the same reasons that the foremost ufologist in the world today, Jacques Vallée, I think, while I don't agree with his ultimate conclusions, I think he's right about the problems with the alien or the extraterrestrial view. And that is that, one, he doesn't say this point, but interstellar travel is very, very seemingly impossible. Number two, the number of cases of aliens visiting the Earth and doing the same things repeatedly, the same kind of tests on animals, soil, humans, seem to be very rudimentary and just done at such a high number that you think they would already have what they wanted. Another reason that he doesn't believe aliens is the answer is because the chances of at least natural evolution bringing about another race of people that are very much like us, anatomically speaking anyway, is, in his estimation and others, pretty much zero. Now, if you factor in God, that changes the possibility. But you would have to consider God, I think, to make that a real possibility. And then travel distances is very difficult. Of course, people have talked about things like wormholes and bending space and curving space, all this kind of stuff, and that's debated. There are astronomers. I would suggest looking at Hugh Ross from Reasons to Believe. He has a lot of good information. See, for example, his book Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. And he argues that it is not possible for interstellar travel to take place. I know there are other people who do think that that's possible, and I will leave that debate up to the physicists. But if they were simply physical beings, I don't think, agreeing with Vallée, I think he brings up a good point. One, what we see in the phenomena with UFOs and aliens really seem to track what people have in their culture, in terms of their own religious beliefs and their own folklore. Furthermore, if they're really physical beings, it doesn't account for the evidence. And to use Vallée's way of explaining it, it's just not weird enough. The alien view isn't weird enough. We need something that will account for the seemingly immaterial aspects of this. And interestingly, Grusch says that he's not saying what these things are, and he is leaving open the possibility of interdimensional beings, which is what Vallée says. So Vallée thinks they're physical beings that can somehow manipulate space and time. J. Allen Hynek, who was the top scientist for Project Blue Book, actually, in a very interesting book that's being re-released, I think in November, called The Edge of Reality, says that he doesn't think these things are actually physical at heart. They can cause physical effects. They can cause physical disturbances like we would think of with poltergeist type activity. So it's the alien view is difficult to swallow, given all of the data. We have to take in all of the, not just the radar, not just the visual sightings, but the seemingly immaterial nature of these things, and the fact that they can do things that physical things shouldn't be able to do, and the obvious and now undisputed, even according to our own government, paranormal. In fact, this goes back to at least the 60s. The government saying that these are seemingly paranormal in nature, and even as late as 2021, with skinwalkers at the Pentagon, the government is realizing, it appears, that there is a lot of paranormal, weird poltergeist activity going on in conjunction with these UFO sightings and the alleged alien abduction. So it shouldn't change what we do know based on what we don't know. We can't start changing what we know about ufology or about reality or Christianity, for that matter. We do know, I think there are good arguments that God exists, that Jesus was raised from the dead in the first century, and we shouldn't start throwing that out just because there are claims, again, unsubstantiated claims as of right now, as of August 13th, 2023, there has not been any physical verifiable evidence that people can research and look at. It is just the claims of David Grusch, which are contradicted by error. Now, I realize the government has lied in the past, and maybe that's what's going on, but we do have arrows saying there is not any evidence for crashed craft or any kind of quote-unquote biologics or other beings. So we'll see, hopefully, one way or the other. But as of right now, we should be skeptical. We should not change what we do know for what we don't know. And 3, we should form views based on evidence and the whole context. I've already kind of gotten ahead and said that, of data, to include the abduction and paranormal phenomena. Whatever is going on with ufology is broader than simply seeing a flying saucer in the sky. It will take into consideration psychology, sociology, theology, and it will have to take into consideration the seemingly immaterial nature of these things, as well as the paranormal stuff that goes along with it. And I've already been saying that. And number 4, Christianity is not in danger one way or the other. There would just be questions that would need to be asked if we did somehow come across other life, sentient, rational life in the universe. But we need to focus on what we know, not on what we don't. So there have been people who have been nervous or upset about their faith or just their view of reality regarding these claims by Grusch and others, who are saying that these crafts exist and that we have these living beings or whatever. Someone has brought up to me, I haven't heard him say this before myself, but for example, some have said that Lou Elizondo has said, well, if you knew what I know, then your theology, you would just throw it away. Well, that's nonsense. I like Lou Elizondo, and I think he's right about a lot of things. I appreciate his courage to come out and talk about UFOs. I've watched his documentary. I like his documentary. I paid for it and watched it, enjoyed it. Still watch it some. But adding new beings to creation does not do away with the necessity of a creator. Okay, so it's like the multiverse theory. Some people want to say, well, we have all these infinite number of universes, therefore we don't need to explain this one. That doesn't do anything to explain away the need for a creator. All it does is require more reasons for a creator. Adding more things that are contingent and can't account for their own being doesn't negate a creator. All it does is add more things that would be created. So hypothetically speaking, if you add other beings in the universe like aliens, they're still going to be contingent, physical, material kind of beings. Or even if they're immaterial, they're still contingent. And they can't account for their own being. And they can't add a cause to another cause forever without stopping at an ultimate cause that itself is not caused. And that would be God. And that's where ufology intersects with classical theology. is that there's ultimately going to be a reason and a cause for all things that are in nature and that are in the universe. And there is this paranormal, seemingly demonic connection with what we normally consider to be aliens or alien type abductions. So, further, what we know about Christ being crucified and risen in the 1st century AD is not just negated, even if there were aliens that were discovered. So we should not think or worry about Christianity being in some kind of danger if we did discover other kinds of beings. We would just have to ask some interesting questions. Like, well, how do they fit into God's overall plan? How do they fit with sin and salvation? And how do they fit with heaven and hell and God's overall plan? So I hope that these questions have been answered, Simon, and that people who have wanted more information on this, I hope this is satisfying. To summarize, we have assertions that as of right now have not been corroborated. We have two people on both sides taking contradictory positions in Congress, saying, yes, there is, no, there aren't UFOs and aliens that we have in possession. And we need to be skeptical, be cautious, and to take the whole context into consideration, not throw out what we do know for what we don't know, and try to explain all the data with the theory that makes the most sense. So we're going to use, pun somewhat intended, abductive reasoning here. We're going to do abduction, but we're going to do it in terms of logic, not with kidnapping people. Abductive reasoning means that you argue to the best explanation. So we have different theories like naturalistic explanation, hoaxes, aliens, interdimensional, spiritual. We have to consider what theory better explains all of the data and explains it best. So, with that said, I hope this makes some sense. We will certainly continue to watch what is going on out there in the government and what's developing with UFOs and aliens and all of that. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you are interested in subscribing and sharing this material. And thanks for checking it out.